is Dr. Christian Seberino. I work with RestonLogic. RestonLogic is a cloud, blockchain, and data engineering company. I'm going to be discussing Hyperledger Fabric. Hyperledger Fabric is a popular private or permissioned blockchain framework. It is also part of the Hyperledger project. So, what is the Hyperledger project? It is a project started by the Linux Foundation in 2015 with many members, including IBM, Oracle, Intel, Cisco, JP Morgan, and Red Hat. And there are many other members as well. The Hyperledger project coordinates the development of multiple open source blockchain projects and related tools. Now, Hyperledger Fabric, one useful thing about it is that it has a flexible modular architecture. So it can support various choices that different customers might want. So for example, you can easily select different consensus algorithms. You can easily select different authentication systems, and you can easily select different application systems as well as configure lots of other options. Hyperledger Fabric has access to many tools. So I've listed a few here. So if you need an identity system, you can look into Indy. If you want some tools to help with orchestration, you can look into Cello. In order to analyze the data on your blockchain, you can look into Explorer. If you want to build bridges between blockchains, you can use Cactus. And if you want to measure the performance of your blockchain, you can use Caliper. Now let me say a little bit more about Hyperledger applications. So Hyperledger applications are also referred to as chain codes and smart contracts. You'll see those terms used. Hyperledger Fabric applications are typically written in Go and JavaScript. However, you can write your chain codes in other languages by installing additional components. So Java is certainly a language that you can write your chain codes in with the installation of additional components. Now, in order to deploy a Hyperledger Fabric solution, the people that are going to be using your application will need access to a network of nodes that run Hyperledger Fabric software. Now, the users can easily set up their own Hyperledger Fabric network themselves. Alternatively, they can use a managed version from one of several providers. Let me say a little bit more about networks. Let me now talk about the structure of a deployed network. So Hyperledger Fabric networks are divided into organizations with channels. So if you imagine, for example, 10 companies that are going to be participating in a Hyperledger Fabric network, each of those 10 companies will contribute one or more computers. So the computers donated by each company will likely be defined to be part of a separate organization. So you'll have likely a separate organization for each company, all right? And then companies, organizations that want to interact will set up channels. So you can have a channel that pertains to all of the participants. You can also have other channels that only pertain to some of the participants, some of the customers. Now, each of those channels will have their own blockchain. So it's important to know that blockchains only exist in channels. And there could be more than one blockchain, there could be more than one channel on a Hyperledger Fabric network. All right, let me say a little bit more about the architecture of a Hyperledger Fabric network. So here in this diagram, you see 3 companies, and typically each company will form a Hyperledger Fabric organization. And the computers that they contribute are referred to as peers, the computers that have a copy of the blockchain that execute applications, all right? And then you can see 2 examples of channels in the diagram. I have one channel that pertains to all 3 companies, but you can also see that there is a second channel between company 2 and company 3. So, for example, suppose that company 2 wanted to give a special price for a certain product only to company 3, and they wanted to keep the details of that only between those 2 companies. So that would be one reason why they would set up a separate channel, and then they would have a blockchain that would only be visible to company 2 and company 3. All right? There are 2 other types of computers, nodes, that are involved in Hyperledger Fabric networks. You also need what are referred to as orderers that decide on the order of the transactions in the blockchain. And also you have membership service providers that provide authentication services. So these companies may not necessarily trust each other. Regardless, you still want to have good security regardless of how much they trust each other. And so you have membership service provider nodes that can provide things like public key infrastructure and other related services to keep the network secure. So now let me do a demo for you. I'd like to now show you how to set up a Hyperledger Fabric network, as well as how to deploy a Hyperledger Fabric application. I will be using Oracle Cloud Services for this example. They have tools to assist with the deployment of a Hyperledger Fabric application. So you first create an account with Oracle Cloud, and when you log in, you'll see something like you see on this page. And then I select on the menu that opens up when you press the hamburger icon in the upper left. I choose blockchain platform. And so here is where you can now create a Hyperledger Fabric network. So you press this create blockchain platform, and there you can give your network a name. You can set other options as well. Now, when you launch a new network, it'll take some time for it to be spun up to be ready for use. So I've already created a Hyperledger Fabric network called Chris Network. So I will be now immediately using that for this demo. So let me click on the name. And so you see here some information about when the network was created here at the bottom. And so I'm going to go ahead and click this blue button called Service Console. And that's going to give me more information about this Hyperledger network. Now, so apparently there's 8 nodes on this network. And right now there is 1 block on the blockchain. So not too much is happening. If I click on this network tab, you can see, if I click here, well, first let me select network, and then if I click on this little diagram right here, you can see a picture of my network. And then if I click on the nodes tab, you can see more information about the specific computers on the network, about the peers, the orderers. All right, so you can see there the port that they're open on. You can see various URLs and other information. Okay, and then remember I said that to deploy a blockchain, you need a channel. So my network already has a default channel set up. I can create other channels as well. And then also I have a tab called chain codes. Now I haven't deployed an application yet, so there's no chain code here. Okay, now on the last tab, developer tools, they have a couple of sample applications that I can use for this demo. So I'm going to select this one called Car Dealer. There's a couple other choices, but that's a good one for this demo. And so I'm going to select peers that are going to, I'm going to install this chain code on. So let me click install. And so you can see that that was successfully installed. All right. And then now what I can do is I can deploy that application to a blockchain in a channel. So let me go back to the channels page and let me create a new channel. And I'll call it, let's say, my channel. And I will again let both peers be part of this channel. And then there's a warning about that I can't delete a channel, so I'll just click yes for that. And if I just wait a few seconds, then the channel will be created. And then after I've created this channel, I'm then going to deploy my application on this channel called My Channel. All right. So I have here my car dealer application, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to instantiate it on the My Channel channel. All right, and so let me click instantiate, and I have to select the peers, so let me do that. I'll go ahead and put both again. Now, this graphical interface is specific to Oracle. So if you were using a different managed service provider, of course, the interface would be different. So keep that in mind. I will now use the car dealer application. So I went back to the Developer Tools tab. I clicked on the samples link on the menu on the left, and then visiting the section where I first installed this application, this chain code, I'm going to now click this invoke button here on the right. So here I'm going to use this application in various ways that a car dealership might use it. So I'm going to first add some vehicle parts that we are going to want to track on the blockchain. So I will make up, let's say, some serial number for the part, and let's say it's owned by John Smith, and let's call it part 1A, and then let's say the assembler is company 1, and I press this execute button. And then if all goes well, then this part will be added, will be recorded on the blockchain. All right, and so success. And if we look at the blockchain, we will see details of this addition there. So let me go ahead now, though, however, and do a couple more transactions, as they're called. So let me add another part. This one I will say has some other serial number. And let's say this one is owned by Bob Jones. And let's call this one part 2B. And this one was made by company 2. And let me execute that. All right. So we can track various parts on the blockchain. We can also transfer ownership. So let me do a transaction that transfers ownership of this part. All right. So I'm going to transfer the part that I just created with the serial number displayed there. Let me give it to somebody else, like maybe Nancy Miller, whoever that is. All right, and so hopefully that'll show success. Yes, and so you can record parts on the blockchain. You can transfer ownership. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, we can also add an entire vehicle on the blockchain and track that. So let me do that. So let me give it, make up some chassis number, and let's say this is owned by Ron's car dealer, and then the manufacturer, company 3, the model K, airbag serial number, such and such. Okay, and then we execute that, and then we could also, if we wanted to, transfer ownership, just like we transferred ownership of the car part. So now I have added an application to my Hyperledger Fabric network. I've also used the application. Specifically, I've added car parts that I want the application to manage, and I've also added a vehicle, and I've also transferred ownership of a car part. So now I went back to the dashboard tab, and you can see here in the middle, in the box labeled channel activity, you can see there that now it says that there are 8 blocks on the blockchain associated with the channel called My Channel, right? Before there was just one. So what I want to do now is I want to inspect the information on that blockchain. So I'm going to click the name of the channel here at the bottom of the page where it says My Channel in blue. And then when I do that, it's going to take me to a new page that has information about the blocks on the blockchain of that channel. Okay, so here you can see a list. In the left column, you can see there that has the block number, and the next column has the time that that block was added to the blockchain, and then the third column labeled type that has information about that block, and then the last column, user transactions, has information about the number of transactions in the block. So what we can do then is we can click on any block number, and then we can see information about that specific block, such as the transactions. Now let me look at the first 3 blocks first of all. So those, look at the far right column, user transactions. So those first 3 blocks do not have any transactions in them, no user transactions. So those were used just to initialize the blockchain, configure the blockchain. And then it's only when we get to block number 3 that we actually have some of the transactions that we added. So I'm going to click here on 3. And when I clicked on the row for block number 3, you can see at the bottom that the information about the one transaction in that block appeared. All right. So the first column has what's called a transaction ID. That's a name, like a serial number to refer to that transaction by. And then you can see there the next column has the time that that transaction was added. And then after that, it says the chain code that that applies to. And then if I click on the triangle to the left of the transaction ID, what will happen is that information below will appear. And so you can see there is the information for the first part, the one I called part 1A. You can see there information on the part that was added. And then let me go to block number 4. So let me click on that row and let me open up the one transaction in that block. And you can see there information inside the block for the transaction that created part 2B. Okay, and then let me show you a few more. So if I click on block number 5, you see there a block, you see there information for the transaction that transferred ownership of that vehicle part to Nancy Miller. All right, and so this just gives you a feel for what it's like to use Hyperledger. Now, of course, in a real application, you will have much more blocks, much more transactions, and much more activity going on. So in summary, Hyperledger Fabric is a popular open source, private, or permissioned blockchain framework of the Hyperledger project. It is modular with many tools and options for applications. Deployments require networks with various types of nodes controlled by organizations. And once again, my name is Dr. Christian Seberino, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions.